Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Campbell, the managing editor with the International Journal of Sports PT, and I'm here today with Mark Callahan, I'm going to let him describe what his role is and in what company, who is one of our founding sponsors. So I'm going to let him take that from here because we had a recent big change in the company. So I'm going to let him describe that so you're familiar with what products we're talking about, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the technology.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Mark Callahan. I'm with DJO. We used to be DJO Global, and now we are now Enovis. So we just had a new public trading ceremony on Wall Street last week to announce it. So it's pretty exciting. So it's ENOVIS. It's going to be the ticker will be publicly traded underneath that if you wanted to take a look at how we're doing. But basically, it was just to put a new name. Enovis stands for innovation and vision, together. And what we're trying to do is help, the future of the rehab space and trying to create technological products as well as our standard, products that you know of so well in the Chattanooga lineup that have been used for many, many years. Actually, Chattanooga celebrated their 75th anniversary this year, so it's pretty amazing. But the whole global structure of Enovis is that there's multiple medical lines under it. So there's our DJO Surgical, which has surgical implants. We have the bracing, number one bracing division in the world, DJO. That'll stay DJO. You'll see that, as well as the Chattanooga brand, which Lightforce, where I was with previously, came along about a year and a half ago when we were acquired by DJO. So the Lightforce brand is in part of the Chattanooga family now. In the foot care, there's Dr. Comfort as well. So the Compex line is still for home devices and things for patients to take home with them, massage guns and TENS units and things like that. So lots of different products, all designed to basically help patients get better. And we're here just to try to help continue to push that along as time goes on.
So as like kind of our typical clinician is very familiar with a lot of Chattanooga products, your Easton units and your hydroculators and kind of anything you could think of that goes in a clinic. But just to kind of focus in on, I think we're coming off of this Enovis announcement and everything, this tech side and the vision of the future. And even for me, starting to dabble into some new technology. And we do have the Class 4 laser, the Lightforce Class 4 laser that we've been using for a while here in the clinic, which we love, and getting more into things like shockwave and just kind of expanding. I think something that things have been going on like in Europe and other places for a while that finally we're kind of coming around to. So talk a little bit about what you guys are doing, what your initiatives are right now. What are you trying to really get out there from your brands as far as what's new, what's innovative, what's coming up?
Yeah, so basically DJO really wanted to put their flag in the ground for technology when they acquired Lightforce a year and a half ago. They did have the Shockwave lineup, which you just referred to, and those products, whether it's focus shockwave or radial pressure wave, are great for tendinopathy. That's where they really shine in the literature, and they are pretty much standard of care internationally. In the United States, for whatever reason, it's been very slow to adopt. So when you say shockwave, people still sort of look at you a little weird. But it's slowly starting to get there. There's tons of things in the literature to support it. So it's definitely evidence-based. It's just not adopted real well in the US. So we're trying to change that. And then the Class 4 laser, Lightforce has been around for about 12 years or so and are pretty much the industry leader in high power laser. So we're taking those two products, and my job as our director of clinical education and director of marketing on these technical projects is to try to let clinicians know how they both work independently. But the nice thing is that this class, they work really well together,
right?
Because they're both stimulating tissue healing and blood flow and a lot of things that are going to help some of these chronic or even acute problems get better that you would have a tough time doing otherwise. So it's exciting to try to help educate and show people sort of like, I like to term it as active healing, what's going on under that umbrella and how these products fit and can help patients get better a lot faster than maybe some of the traditional things that some folks are still doing.
I keep hearing this term biohacking, which I know there's a lot more to biohacking than just what we're talking about with these modalities, but I do think that seems to be a piece of the puzzle. It's like, how can we as therapists give our patients just that little edge to just kind of get there a little quicker, get there feeling a little bit better, less pain, better recovery times, all these things that we can struggle with at times in a rehab process. And you feel like that's kind of the trajectory that rehab is going from what you're seeing?
Well, I like to think of it in terms of like, if you think about rehab in general, it's a very macro process. We're talking about joint systems and soft tissues, muscles, and, tissue,
Right.
whereas these devices are really trying to get at a much more micro. They're
Yeah.
trying to get at the cellular component and try to really spur on metabolic change from a very micro level.
Right.
So, the folks that are sort of the old school, it's got to be one way or the other. What I like to point out to them is like if you marry these two things, you're going to get even better outcomes because you can't just do micro treatment without the functional macro and vice versa.
Right.
And a lot of people like to sort of sit on one side of that fence or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, that's a war you don't need to have.
Yeah.
You're trying to just take everything. I had a teacher say, when I was back in school a million years ago, was, you beg, steal, and borrow anything you can to move the needle forward. And hopefully, most rehab professionals are thinking that same way. So they keep an open mind to hearing about how some of these things work.
Right.
And, even if you have great hands, you can't really mobilize the mitochondria.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
And you also can't needle necessarily mitochondria. You might use that again from like a perspective of stimulating that micro healing, and then again with things like dry needling, which has obviously come a long way in the last probably decade in the world of therapy. You have some states where you can't do it. You have some types of like PTAs that can't do it, and you have just some of these other opportunities that create a better healing environment that we can give to a lot more clinicians and put in a lot more hands. So,
and if you think about it, just generally too, as far as medicine goes, you try to do things that are less invasive towards more invasive. So if people's go-to is to go directly to sticky needles in folks because they've seen good, efficacy with that, okay, but you can probably put a few more bullets in your gun that maybe are going to be tolerated by some of the folks that wouldn't tolerate that or have a needle aversion or what have you. It's nice to have a couple different options in the clinic.
Yeah, for sure. I think that kind of conversation pairs well with just talking about, when I do these kind of sponsor spotlights to introduce our readership to our sponsors is kind of the why. Like, why did we come to you? Why did you agree to partner with us? And I think as you're talking about this, this vision and the future and the technology, and then just the access to the knowledge, I think we pair really well together because obviously everyone knows DJO, everyone knows Chattanooga, and we know some of the old school thought processes. There's plenty of research on bracing or no bracing and things of that nature. But what kind of about our mission and vision and our open access status and stuff do you feel like drew? I know you aren't the decision maker on that, but you helped with getting on board with the journal. So.
Yeah, I think the fact that the journals really try to focus on clinically based research that's going to impact clinicians in what they're seeing on a day-to-day basis obviously is near and dear to our heart. Some of the other sports journals are getting a little bit more lab oriented and maybe a little bit more theoretical as far as looking at a couple questions that might not really help move the needle today in the clinic. So from that approach standpoint, the fact that your articles and push is to try to keep a very clinic-centric focus is very much where we're living, because a lot of the research that we're involved with is all designed to try to prove out our products and that they do perform and how that they can work with different pathologies that we see every day. Sure. So from that standpoint, it's very much a hand in glove relationship.
Yeah, and our ability to explain to our patients truly the science behind it, because you guys are putting in the time and effort into the research. We're obviously trying to make it as available as it possibly can be to the general public by being open access, and then also, not limiting some of the great clinicians out there that aren't necessarily lab researchers with a big fund from a school or something to be able to say like, hey, I've been using the laser on X pathology for 2 years now. I have a lot of data collected. Maybe I should write a paper on it, and giving them an outlet to do something like that, which we're really big fans of. So,
and what I try to do is whenever possible is doing webinars and things where we can bring clinicians in that are using their products and can talk about firsthand experience. Like, hey, here's how I'm using this device, and here's how I'm getting good outcomes on this problem.
Sure.
Or here's how I'm combining them. I mean, it's not a level 1 research project, but it's giving you guys some real information and dosing information on how you can apply these products on the patients that you're seeing and start to at least, move in that direction. And, as we know, research is expensive, takes time, and certain things need to be proven out for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you start hearing from multiple clinicians or you see or from multiple peers that, hey, I'm using this and it seems to really be working well.
Yeah.
There's probably something to that.
And those big peer-reviewed, randomized controlled trial stuff we're always 2 to 3 years behind on getting that stuff actually disseminated out to the public. So that anecdotal quality anecdotal, evidence is very helpful. So, and speaking of that, you guys have some available like education and research on the website, which I know I could post, but anything specific to that you want to speak of for anyone that has no idea what the heck we're talking about with laser or shockwave or any of the technology?
Yeah, we have a couple websites we're trying to bring together. So by next year, they'll all be in one happy home. But right now, if you look at lightforcemedical.com, there's a lot of abstracts we have on there with regard to the laser, so that you can get a look at that and it'll point you in the right direction. There's also a whole host of webinars we've done that I've hosted a lot of them to try to get information on different topics you might find interesting. ChattanoogaRehab.com is the Chattanooga site. That's mostly has just our products and things of that nature that you can take a look at. But eventually it'll all be in one big happy place, and you'll be able to sort of get a wealth of information. In addition to that, just keeping posted. You can like us on a couple of different social media platforms, and then you'll get alerted to when we do our next webinar or our next presentation on a topic, and that way you can kind of tune in and watch it on demand.
Cool. Well, and I'm sure we're going to be setting up some stuff with the journal as well to kind of co-brand and co-sponsor some webinars and some education. So we'll make sure we get that going. Maybe we'll be surveying the audience to see what they want to learn more about first. Maybe laser, maybe shockwave, maybe how we layer them together. But I think that'll be an up and coming thing now that you guys have gotten through all of this rebranding process. But
Right.
just so now everyone knows when you're at the next meeting and you see this new name, it's still the old friendly faces.
That's
it's
right.
It's just a new umbrella.
That's right. So as far as the Chattanooga and the Lightforce brands, just to reiterate, they're going to still be present at the booth. You can look for us underneath those two names because they're part of divisions underneath the larger Enovis umbrella. So
Cool.
Shouldn't be too confusing, hopefully, when you're at your next trade show.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for being here today, and we'll get you back on here soon talking a little bit more scientifically.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks.